Welcome, fam. Your scale can tell you that you lost 8 pounds. It cannot tell you what those 8 pounds were made of. It has no idea. It weighs you the same way it would weigh a bag of rice, and it hands you a number. And you're building your whole week around that one number. But there's a gap. That gap between what the scale knows and what it can know is the reason your last diet worked for 5 weeks and then quit on you. Tonight, I'm going to show you what your body actually takes when you take food away from it and how to make sure it takes the right thing. So, fam, welcome back to another episode of Nutrition Tuesday on a show, Anchor Daily, with your host, Nate Mlambo. We've been off air for a couple of weeks now, which was a good break. It is summertime, so which is always good. So today, as we get back to a show, regular schedule, I'm excited because there's updates that I'll share with you as we go through the week and next week. But lots of things that I want to share with you. But today, I want to focus on something super important. And as always, I'll be sharing with you some of the themes and topics that are very important to help you stay in shape, steward your body, and make sure that you're treating your body like the temple of God, the temple of the Holy Spirit, and understanding that we're supposed to have a good relationship with our body. So, as we go through today, we'll do the same thing, go through a few of the things that people believe to be truths. But when you really look at it much deeper, you realize that a lot of people are being misled. So before we get started as well, as you get in, as you start watching this stream, this show, this episode, wherever you're watching from, if you're listening only, make sure to hit that subscribe, that follow button, hit like, share, let the algorithm know that you want to watch and see more of this content. So I really want to emphasize this because sometimes also some people get unsubscribed and if you're already thinking that you're subscribed, just double check to make sure that you are in fact subscribed. And that will make sure that you get more of this content because, again, we have to make sure that we are living in alignment and also taking care of our health, taking care of our bodies. So, this is the first thing that I want us to make sure that we're doing. So, if you're watching, wherever you're watching from or listening, make sure to hit that follow button. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Make sure to hit that like button. So, without any more delay, we want to look at what it means to actually cut calories from the diet because a lot of people seem to be getting quite confused because some of the things that I'm going to share with you tonight is actually going to be revealing, and I'm going to share with you some of the lies that I personally believed in and how I overcame some of the roadblocks that I faced and the challenges that I faced as well as I was working out and training. So I'm telling you this not because it's something that I learned from a book. I actually used to compete bodybuilding, and when you compete, the whole goal is to walk on the stage as conditioned as possible. And you want to look dry, lean, every line showing on your body because that's a sport. You're judged on how you look. You're judged on how much muscle you have. Do you have symmetry? Do you have definition? So that's what you're judged on. So my first two shows, I did them in the dumb way. And I want to be honest with you about that because a lot of people in my industry will tell you that they'll tell you a story where they were smart all the time and they did everything right and they never fumbled. And I'll be honest, like I wasn't. I had a couple shows. The first few shows I ran on coffee, and I ate almost nothing. I starved myself when I look back, and I called it discipline because I could just suppress my appetite and go on throughout the day without eating anything. And here's the part that will mess with you. It actually works. It works. And I got on stage, that weight came off. And if you had looked at my scale during those preps, you'd have said that, okay, this man knows what he's doing. So the two things before we go anywhere is one, number one, the first thing that's important is around halfway this show, I'm going to tell you where the weight you lost actually came from, not the total, the contents. And when you hear it, a lot of what happened in your last diet is going to make sense in about probably like, excuse me, in probably about 4 seconds, almost immediately. And I'm not going to give it to you yet. So stay with me. And the second thing is that of the three lies that I'm going to tell you and break down for you today, I believed one of them completely. So I'm going to share with you what that lie was. And not as a beginner, as a competitor, someone with a plan who had been training for about 8, 9 years and thinking that I was already ahead of everyone. And I'll tell you which one it was and what actually changed my mind, because that is important. Because sometimes we don't admit that maybe we believe something that was wrong. And sometimes at the time it is the right thing. Sometimes, most times we're working with the best information that we have and we believe that is the truth. And truth sometimes can change depending on circumstances and what's going on. So it's important to always realize that, right? Because, I like to give the example of food, because sometimes, the food that we ate 10 years ago is completely different from the food that we eat today, even though we call it, let's say we call it chicken. But the chicken today might have more hormones and chemicals, which is different from like chickens from 10 years ago. And unless if you're actually raising chickens on your own, maybe it's a different case. But for the majority of the people that buy chicken from the store, it could be completely different kind of chicken and any meat products as well, eggs included. So here's a verse this whole show is going to sit on. This is Proverbs 21, verse 5. The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to want. So read that again with your diet in hand and realize that it doesn't say the lazy person ends up with nothing, because that would be an easy verse. Everyone already agrees that lazy doesn't work. The verse is doing something much more uncomfortable here. It's putting two people side by side. Both want the same thing and both work for it. And they end up on opposite sides. One plans and one rushes. That's important. That's important to keep in mind. So when you think about it, a lot of people try to rush things. Speed is good in some cases, but when you hurry things, it costs money. Hurry costs money, like real money. And that's a principle, not to try harder and not to want it more. The person who rushed, the person who planned can burn the exact same effort and get completely different bodies out of it. So if you've seen someone who says, okay, I want to lose weight, I can lose weight in a month, I can lose 10 kgs in a month, which is extreme, completely extreme. 10 kgs, that's about two kgs a week, which is like, I don't know, like 3 point something kgs, almost 4 kgs, 4 pounds. That's a lot. That's a lot. That's extreme. It's hard to sustain in the long term, because it's not about how quick you get there, but it's about forming the right habits. That's what it comes down to. So that's super important to understand. And I want to set the ground for us right now for how we talk about our bodies, because that is the essence of what we do on this show. Because this is where a lot of Christian fitness content actually goes sideways in both directions. So, your body, first of all, is not God. You don't worship it, you don't build your identity on it, and you don't get to be a better person because your waist is smaller. It's also not the enemy. It's something. It's not something that you punish. And always remember that you were handed your body to take care of. That's all you have to do. Take care of it. That's the whole posture. So, with that being said, we're going to look at the three lies. The three lies, and these lies are not lies that, you hear a lot of people telling you all the time, but these are also lies that even the most experienced people that are very careful, they fall for, because it's something that creeps up on you. And because also you have like different influences, people that tell you, oh, do this, don't do this, do that. And because they tell you all of these things, one of the things that you then realize that sometimes if you just follow that thing, it can become dangerous for you. It can become very dangerous. So we have to keep an eye. So before we go ahead, just drop a one in the chat or in the comments if you've ever cut your food hard and felt like it worked at first. Just drop it, just a one. I want to see how many of us are in the same boat, because I promise you, you're actually not the only one. So drop a one in the chat, drop a one in the comments. Let's see if someone else has actually gone through this. Let's see if there's anyone else. I'll see what is going on. Is there someone? We'll see. I don't know if my chat is connected here. I think we might be off the chat. Maybe. We'll see. I'll check it out. I'll check and see if we got the chat. Okay, so maybe we don't have the chat on. I'm not hearing dings, dings, dings. I forgot how to stream now at this point. But no, I think we'll be good. I think we'll be good. So one of the things that we're going to do is explore the three lies that actually make careful people cut too hard. Because it's common when you look at fitness creators, they love to cut. They love to look shredded. But it also comes at a cost. It comes at a big cost, right? So this is what we're going to do. So now let's see where we're at. Okay, so we'll move on from here, right? We'll move on and see where we are with the three lies. Okay. So we're going to look at number one. This is going to be the first one that we look at. And lie number one is something that I think a lot of us need to pay attention to with lie number one, right? So the first thing that we need to understand is that people, when they try to cut, they tend to tell themselves all sorts of stories just to help them get through that cut, because it's not easy. It's hard, right? So the three lies, not from people who don't care, but these are the lies that get careful people who read, people who track, people who show up. That's what makes them so dangerous. A lazy belief can't hurt you much because you don't act on it. These beliefs that I'm going to share with you get acted on for months. That's the crazy part. Probably the craziest part of it all. So, lie number one is if the scale is going down, it's working. Weight is weight. I'll deal with the details once I've lost the weight. Okay? So I understand why you believe this. The scale is the only tool most people have. It's in the bathroom. It's free if you already bought it. It gives you a number every single morning, and that number feels like the truth because it's a number. But look at what that little machine can actually do. It's a spring and a screen. It measures how hard you're pressing down on the floor. That's all. It cannot tell the difference between a pound of fat and a pound of muscle. It cannot tell you the difference between a pound of muscle and a pound of water. It cannot tell you whether you had a salty dinner, whether you're carrying a heavy period week, whether you drank a big glass of water on the way to the bathroom. Now, here's where the real cost actually shows up because the scale can only report one number and you start chasing that number. And when the only score you can see is total weight, you'll always be tempted to do the thing that drops the total weight fastest. Even when that thing is the thing that damages you the most. Very important to understand that this is a big lie. So you cut harder, the number moves. You get rewarded for that behavior, the same behavior that's costing you. So realize that that's not willpower failure. That's a bad scoreboard. So let me know in the chat a real question for you guys. And be honest. How many times a week do you weigh yourself? Just type the number. Type the number in the comments of the chat. I'm not gonna shame anyone. I want you to see the answer everybody else is typing. I mean, some of you probably don't weigh yourselves. Or maybe you weighed yourself once and then you're scared and then you ran away. And you're like, no, 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 I can't weigh myself no more. But anyway, just type in the chat. Let me know. Let me know. How many times a week do you weigh yourself? Just type the number. Just type the number. Right. So you want to understand that the scale is honest about the total, but it's completely blind about everything else that matters inside it. It's a data point. It's not the whole picture. Right. So that's the first thing that you need to understand. Now we're going to move on to line number 2. Line number 2 says that the faster I lose it, the better I can always ease off later. The faster I lose it, the better I can always ease off later. So, some of you have told yourselves that, I've got a wedding, I've got a trip, a photo shoot. Excuse me. I'm gonna drink some water. I'll get a water break soon. I've got a wedding, a trip, a date on the calendar, something that you're looking forward to. So you're like, I need to see real progress right now. I can always ease off later. That's what you tell yourself. This is the lie that I believed in myself. And at that time, I was not training because backstory is that I used to train since I was 17. I mean, I started training when I was 17, but I started a business where I was painting houses. And by painting houses, it meant that I had to work in the winter and work in the summer. And the time to get to the gym was very, very challenging to get to the gym because when you're starting out anything, it requires a lot of your time. So fitness was something that I already did and I was good at, but also didn't realize how much it meant to me. So that was the first thing that I let go. And then I was confused. I was out of shape after some time. And then my energy was different. It was different. And I was trying to figure out, like, okay, what do I do? So whatever reason, I had some friends that were competing. And I was like, okay, let me just compete because they're also competing. So I was like, okay, let me do it. Let me challenge myself to have some sort of like commitment, some goal that I can work towards. And that's what I did. I chose bodybuilding. This is the one I owned for 2 full contest preps. And I want you to hear why it's so convincing. Because if you think only reckless people believe this, you'll never catch it in yourself. Fast works. Fast is exciting. Fast gives you a win in week one. And week one is exactly when you need a win to keep going. You need that push, you need that drive, that motivation. And slow feels like nothing is happening. Why am I doing all of this work? I'm not seeing any results. And nothing is happening is where most people actually quit. So the logic is straight and it's all right. Go fast, get the win, keep the motivation. But there's something that happens. Something that happens. And here's what no one and nobody tells you. When you go faster than your body can give up fat, it doesn't just say no, it doesn't refuse. Your body's not built to refuse. It goes and finds the difference somewhere else. And the fastest place to find it is not in your fat. And what changed my mind wasn't a study, but it was a coach that I hired when I actually needed to train. I needed to get fit. And actually, this was for the third show that I competed in. Because the second show, when I was starving myself, one of the peak weeks, before the peak week, I ordered a pizza. I was like, I was like, no, I just couldn't because I had to work, I had to train, and I wasn't eating enough. So what changed my mind wasn't the study, wasn't some book or research paper, but it was a coach who actually gave me a meal plan and gave me a grocery list on what to buy. And he handed me more food. And guess what? I even started getting leaner. So you can't argue with that. I've been telling myself a story about discipline, and the story was wrong. I wasn't being disciplined. I was being hasty. without proper knowledge, without proper information, tried and tested information. And hurry, it costs you. So after that, I'll say, like, I changed my mind. I say to that, I say to that, like, my coach, I can't thank him enough. I was Delhi. He's actually like a professional bodybuilder himself, natural bodybuilder. He's a pro. And I was like, okay, cool. I actually had trained with him since I started uni, went to the same gym, and yeah, he helped me out. Couldn't thank him more than enough. So that's why it's always good to look up to people who've done things that you want to accomplish yourself as well. And when you need guidance, to do it with guidance, because sometimes we think and we lie to ourselves and tell ourselves that, okay, what I'm doing here is going to work. And maybe it might work, but you're punishing yourself. You're punishing yourself. And now my thoughts have also changed even then from like bodybuilding as a sport itself. My thoughts have evolved and changed where I ask myself, would I compete in a bodybuilding show? And I'm like, no, I wouldn't do it anymore. Because even putting your body under that much stress is not the healthiest because your body will compensate. You cannot cheat your body. It needs what it needs. So you can't starve yourself. So I can say this on this show. I used to believe that fast was better. And I used to think that you get some sort of medal because obviously, like with the bodybuilding show, you're looking at like, okay, weeks. Okay, I'm about to get to the show is like 16 weeks out, 5 weeks out. Okay, peak week. Da, 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 da. So you have these times that you're training and you're training for these dates and so much mental strain that you put on yourself, unless that's what you're doing for the like as a career. Okay, sure, that makes sense. But if you need to live a normal life like other people, just anyone else, and be a steward of your body and just focus on life, what you need is to just steward your body, adopt a stewardship mentality, and not have these timelines. Say, I got to do this by this time. So I don't think that fast is better anymore. And for me, I've got the two shows of proof that I was wrong. So one of the things that we need to understand is that fast doesn't mean the fat leaves faster. It means your body has to grab whatever's closest. Excuse me. That's what we need to understand. Now we're moving to lie number 3. And this one is a quiet killer because it sounds like the most reasonable thing anybody has said all night. Cutting calories, eating less of everything. So I'll take a little off every meal. I'll read that again. Cutting calories means eating less of everything. So I'll take a little off every meal. Smaller portions, half a plate, skip the snack, burn even, right across the board. That sounds so mature. It sounds balanced. It sounds like opposite of a crash diet, doesn't it? Just eat the same diet, but just less portions. Yeah, it can work. So you need to watch what actually happens on the plate. So right now, imagine you had chicken and rice and a handful of chips. You cut everything by a third. So you cut a third of the chips. Good, right? You cut a third of the rice and you cut a third of the chicken. So notice something. You just cut the one thing on the plate that was protecting you. You cut it by the same amount as the chips because you're being fair. No, nobody is fair to their body on purpose in a way that hurts them. But food itself, food, I've said it plenty times on this show. Food isn't about equals. Some of what's on that plate is doing a good job. And when you cut evenly, you're actually firing the worker along with everybody else. Can you guess which worker is that? Take a guess. Who's the worker? Who is it that you need to protect? So, chat, think about your last diet. When you cut, did you cut evenly across the board? Or did you decide ahead of time what you're protecting? Just type something, even, protected. I'm pretty sure most of you will have the same answer, I imagine. Because some people, I already know there's, different people that are like, you can't eat too much protein. Oh, you can't eat too much rice. Oh, you can't eat too much chips. Right? So there's always one of those. But let's hear it. Let me know. Let me know what you think. So even cuts are not fair cuts for your diet. This is one of the things that you need to understand, establish, and understand that even cuts just make it a bit harder for you because you're going to cut out the foods that you actually need to help you stay full, stay nourished, and manage your appetite. Because every food item has a function. We had a stream where we talked about how to use MyFitnessPal. We talked about diet and nutrition, the fundamentals, the basics. So you can go back to our earlier shows and watch one of them to understand exactly the different roles of different foods, the different functions for different foods. So you cannot treat all your food equally. So now I want to walk you through somebody, and this is Emily. Let's call her Emily. I want to walk you through the actual week of what it looks like, Emily's week, because this is important for us to understand. Because when we understand what we're doing, it just helps us understand where we're missing the plot. And right now, I'm going to use this example of Emily just to help you understand. Okay, maybe this is me. Okay, maybe I understand this about Emily, but maybe this part is not quite not quite where I am, right? Because in this example, I'm just giving you this as an example. Emily is 38. She's an HR manager with 2 kids, and maybe you don't have kids. Maybe you have 1 kid, but or maybe you're 36. Maybe I don't know. Maybe you're in finance, but This example is just to help you understand exactly. Picture Emily. So, Sunday night, she decides that she's done messing around. She sits down and makes a plan. And it's a good plan. She's not doing anything crazy. No pills, no shakes, no fasting for 4 days. She just decides to take about 600 calories out of her day by making every meal just a little bit smaller. Breakfast comes down, lunch comes down, dinner comes down, the snack, exit, completely out. It's no longer part of the diet. And 2 weeks later, she's down, say, 4 pounds. Now put yourself in her shoes. 4 pounds in 2 weeks. She feels smart. Probably she feels validated, like, hey, this is working. Everyone at her office at work notices this. Guess what they're going to do? Compliments fly in. And what does someone do when something works? It's a positive reinforcement loop that starts forming. So they do more of it. So she tightens it again. And week 5, she's down 7 pounds total. And then it stops. Three weeks, nothing. Same food, same effort, same discipline. No movement on a scale. And here's the part I want you to sit in. Because this is where people quit and blame themselves. Her clothes fit about the same way they did when she was 4 pounds down. She's 7 pounds lighter. And she doesn't look 7 pounds lighter. She's tired all the time. She's snapping at her kids, maybe. She doesn't know why. And she has a friend at work who lost the same 7 pounds over the same couple weeks. But she looks like a different person. Same number on the scale. A completely different outcome. So somebody right now might be able to relate to Emily. So if this is you, if you realize that, okay, maybe I've been through this, like this has happened, just type it in the chat, type it in the comments. If the scale has been stuck for 3 weeks or more while you're doing everything right, type something in the chat or in the comments. Let me know. Let's see how many people raise their hands. Let's see. So now let's talk about what actually happens and what's actually happening in Emily's body. Because this is important to understand. This is important. And I'm going to be careful with you here because I'm not going to sell you certainty I don't have. Because we just made Emily up. So let's split this into 4 buckets. What we know, what the evidence points at, and what's still argued about, and what I personally do. So You should demand that split from anyone teaching you about nutrition because it's not a cookie cutter thing. You have to understand what is going on. That's why you have to customize it. That's why you have to tailor everything. So when you eat less than you burn, this is what we know. Let's put it this way. What we know, right? What we know is that when you eat less than what you burn, the missing energy comes out of your body. Some of it comes out of fat, some of it comes out of muscle. It is never, ever all fat. So that's not a theory right now. That's what we know. That's just how your body is going to pay for the bill. That's just it. You don't choose, you don't decide. That's just what it is. Now, what does the evidence actually point at? So what we know is that when people cut calories without enough protein and without lifting anything heavy, a meaningful share of what they lose is not fat. And this is not a rounding number. We're talking about a real share of it. And when people cut with high protein and keep training, that share goes down a lot. Same weight off the scale, very different contents. This is important to note. There is a difference between people who cut while training and eating protein, a lot of protein, high protein, versus people who cut and they're not training, they're not lifting, strength training, and they're not eating a lot of protein. There is a big difference in terms of what they actually lose. And this is where people start talking about like the conditioning on someone. Oh, someone has a lean look. They lost weight, but they've got a lean look. And then you've got someone you can look at and they look tired. They look wasted. I think those Ozempic faces, when people talk about Ozempic faces, that's what you're seeing, that's what you're noticing. So nutrition plays a key role and strength training plays a key role. This is evidence. Even though people right now are pushing Ozempic, they're pushing Reta, they're pushing all these GLP-1 medications, semaglutide. There is a difference. It's important to understand when you're losing weight. I mean, for some people, they'll have loose skin everywhere else. And you can tell because most times when you look at someone, you can probably tell, like, oh, okay, this person. Because most times when I see people, I can tell a lot of things without them necessarily telling me, but I can just see by observation. And that's just what it is because you can't argue that. So now I'm going to do something most people in my industry won't do. I'm not going to give you a percentage here. And I've seen a dozen numbers thrown around on this. And my honest answer is that it swings hard depending on who you are, how big your cut is, how much muscle you had walking in, and how old you are. So a number would make me sound more sure than I am right now. And I'd rather be useful than impressive. I know what my numbers are, right? But I know that the direction that I'm pointing you in is solid. So the decimal point isn't going to be something that you want to hang on to and cling to as gospel. And anyone or anybody handing you one or two decimal places is selling you something. They're selling you dreams. Let's call it that. So just be careful. But the general principle still remains. We know what the evidence points to. So that's something that we need to acknowledge and just make sure that we're on the same page on that. So, how long are we going on for? So it's been an hour, 50 minutes. Okay, we good. We're good. We're gonna take a little water break for now. Let's see. I'm gonna take a little water break just to hydrate. Let's see where we're at. Take a little water break. Wow. Forgot about streaming. I'm like, wow. So fam, I don't know because I planned for just an hour of this because I think once we cover this part, because I think we've got had a few things that I want us to go through, but it looks like we might actually have to cut off a little bit earlier than I thought that we'll be able to get through this, which is good because next week we can come and continue on. We don't have to rush, right? We're not rushing anywhere. So we'll come back and continue this one because we'll do this part and then we'll continue next week. We'll continue next week because I think, yeah, we're pushing up to an hour. So yeah, definitely. Oh, I thought that we had a bit more time. So anyway, so as we wrap things up here, we're wrapping things up. So let's understand, okay, the things that are still being argued about, right? So one of the things that people still argue about, big thing, is how much your metabolism slows down after weight loss and how long it stays down. That's real. The size of it gets fought over hard by serious people because metabolism, the rate of metabolism is like a contested thing. People argue so many things because we're so diverse. Our functions, our lifestyles are so different. Genetics, so different. The types of foods that we all eat and consume and digest are all different depending on which part of the world that you come from, depending on what your staple food is. And so there's a lot that goes into this. So it's hard for people to always come to an agreement. It's more complicated than just, oh yeah, like eat this and you'll be fine. Your metabolism will speed up. But one thing is fact that we know, activity. Calories in, calories out. That's one of the things. And one of the things that actually speeds up your digestion is activity because your body needs energy. So whatever it is, you need to work out. So the size of it, again, it's not something that we really know, but it's something that people fight over. And anyone who gives you a confident number on this is probably telling you more than the science does, what science is actually saying. So I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to tell you anything because, again, I told you it's complicated. And also, what's argued about is whether losing muscle is the main reason weight comes back or whether it's mostly behavior. And I think one of the things that I would say is my honest read on this is that it's probably both. And behavior is the bigger half. But I still hold that loosely. And there is some evidence that when you don't sleep more, if you don't sleep, more of what you lose actually comes off as a wrong tissue. I also find that convincing. So I'll also tell you probably one of the best known studies, and you can go and do some of the research. Like if anything that I've said here, always feel free to go do a bit of research also, right? You can check and cross-reference what I'm saying with other studies, books as well. And yeah, actually, I'll tell you guys before I head off because I've been doing a lot of work as well with compiling a lot of the programs that I've written, and I'm working on a book, all the programs, workout programs, and the nutrition books. I'm working on a cookbook as well that I've been working on. That's why I was spending a bit of time not recording because I'm working on a couple projects for everyone to have access to it. And because most of the conversations that I have with people, it's like, okay, having calls, talking to people and having discussions, but sometimes it's like, okay, like I can get to everyone. And I think for me personally, it also allows me and gives me room to grow by actually having the book where I can actually compile all the information and put it in a place because I think if you're following the channel, like I've talked about how I've always been journaling. So I've got like records like Nate Fitness, like 2017, my first initial meal plans and diet plans in an Excel tracker. Oh, wow. Time flies. Time flies. But anyway, so yeah, so I'm compiling all of that information and actually putting it in a book so that anyone can also get the book. They can read it, and I think it's going to be exciting. I'll give you more details on it. And yeah, make sure to like and share this video, subscribe right now as we wrap things up. We're not yet done. We've got a few things, the last part that I want us to cover before we go. So just hang tight and we look at the point here. What is still being argued about, right? So we just looked at that. So now I'm going to tell you what I personally do, right? So out of everything that I've told you, so what I personally do, like I've said, is I keep high protein when I'm cutting. That's what I do now. And I keep lifting when I'm cutting, a lot of cardio to burn calories as well, like morning cardio if I can, and then train, and then maybe a little bit of cardio later. But I try include more cardio than I would, like cardio in the morning, workout, and then activity, like whether it's like walking, whether it's like running later on in the day, but definitely more active when I'm cutting. And I'm very intentional about the cardio. Like if it's cycling, if it's like walking, I just know that I have to keep moving. And I'm making sure that my diet is high protein and any extra high fat foods, I cut those out. So like uh, ground beef, avocados, cheese, things like that. I take them out of my diet completely. And that's what I do. So every single time. And when I lost 60 pounds in 6 months, that's exactly what I did. And when I look at the scale, I think I've shown the scale before. When I actually lost weight, I was losing about 2.4 pounds per week, and I was losing about zero point 0.5 pounds of muscle as well. So that goes to show that even if you're so good at this, you do it to the T, to the science, like as precisely as you can, you are still going to lose some muscle, regardless if you're eating high protein or not. But the results will be worse where you lose more muscle if you had no protein or if you didn't eat enough protein. So this is important. And I talked about how much protein you should eat as well in another video in the Nutrition Tuesday streams. So the episodes. So you can go back, watch those. And I think it's the first ones, the first episodes. So you can go back and watch those. And I break it down how much protein you need to eat. I break down the carbs, the fats, everything else is broken down. So we're not going to cover that in this episode. So this is what I wanted us to cover right now. So one of the important things to understand is that the scale itself is that it's reporting the total. So because it's reporting a total, it's not breaking down everything. So now this is the thing that I promised you at the top of the show. So I'm going to give you this, and then we come back next week. And then once we come back, we'll pick up from there. All right. So let's just go back to Emily for a bit. Let's think about Emily for a second here. So if Emily lost 7 pounds, excuse me. Well, yeah. So if Emily lost 7 pounds, here's what was actually in those 7 pounds. There was some fat, real fat, because she earned it. She put in the work. She planned. There was also some water, which was never hers to keep. Naturally, when you're losing weight, you lose some water. Water weight is a real thing. And some muscle. Muscle's going to go. So now it depends how much you lose. Do you lose a 1 pound of muscle? Do you lose half a pound? How much of that pound, of the 7 pounds, do you actually lose that's off the muscle? Because the muscle is the engine, some of the engine. She lost some of the engine. That's why she felt the way that she felt. So she didn't lose 7 pounds of the things she wanted to lose completely, because no one ever does. So she lost some fat and she paid for it with a piece of the machinery that was doing the burning. And that is why she's stuck. Not because she's weak, not because she cheated. She spent the machinery that was actually doing the burning. So the burning started getting slower. And the same effort stopped paying. Because one of the things that you need to understand is that the more muscle you have, the bigger your frame is, the more muscle you have, the more your body actually burns. And the more muscle that you hold on your body, the more you burn. That's something important to understand. So that's one of the things that you need to understand. And from there, I'll say the sentence that I want you to leave with tonight. I'm going to say it twice because it's the whole show. Cutting calories doesn't decide what you lose. It only decides that you lose. I'll say it again. Cutting calories doesn't decide what you lose. It only decides what you lose. Okay? So this is where I'll leave you tonight with this. And